Nigeria's foreign trade increased by 39.3%, very remarkable. That's to 32.26 trillion naira year on year in 2018. That's compared to 23.16 trillion naira in 2017. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, volume of trade in 2018 was the highest recorded since 2014. The total trade dropped by 5.1% to 8.60 trillion naira that's in quarter 4 of 2018 compared to 9.06 trillion naira recorded in the preceding quarter. According to the foreign trade statistics in goods, total exports stood at 5.02 trillion naira in quarter 4, representing an increase of 3.5% over quarter 3 and 28.5% over quarter 4 of 2017. Crude oil exports remained the mainstay of the economy and took the largest share of the total exports of 84.2% in quarter 4. The non-oil products accounted for 4.6% of total exports, while other oil products accounted for 11.2%. To put this into perspective, I have the Chief Executive Officer of Cowrie Assets, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. He joins me now via Skype from Lagos Island, and from Abuja, the former Director General of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Chijoke Ekechukwu, also joins us live from Abuja. Glad to have you join us, gentlemen.
Our pleasure.
Okay, Mr. Chukwu, let me start with you now. We're looking at an increase of about 39.3%. What do you make of this figure, talking about our foreign trade?
Well, if you look at that increase year on year between 2017 and 2018, it shows that there's been some level of improvement in economic activities in 2018. Of course, if you look at other parameters which you use to measure the economic performance of the country, you will actually accept the fact that there was improvement in 2018 compared to 2017. Recall that the GDP grew at only 0.82% in 2017 and at 1.93% in 2018. That was more than a 100% increase in GDP growth rate. And that can only be reflected in the level of economic activities. But most importantly, if you look at the 2018 trade figures, you will observe that the economic structure is still remain the same. Crude oil export account for more than 84% of the total export earnings. And as you can also see, we saw a disproportionate balance between export and import. We saw an export volume that accounted about 5 trillion of the 8.6 trillion, and import of 3.58 trillion naira, which also shows that in terms of imports, we've seen a reduction in import bills because of two factors. One, lower level of consumption. Two, difficulties in accessing foreign exchange. And then on the export side, we witnessed an improvement in our terms of trade. What you refer to terms of trade is the rates or the price at which you sell your product as compared to the price at which you buy imported products. In terms of trade, we saw a crude price that ranged about $62 per barrel in the last quarter of last year, which was reflected in terms of our foreign exchange earnings. Then if you compare quarter on quarter, you observe that the third quarter, we actually had a higher trade volume, which was about 9.06 trillion naira against 8.6 trillion naira in the fourth quarter. So if you look at the fact that you saw a decrease in overall trade activities between the two quarters, but you saw a marginal increase of only 3.5% in terms of exports, then you recognize that the major difference came from the reduction in imports. And that's why I said that there are two factors that may have affected the reduction in imports. One, difficulties in assessing effects for those who are importing goods, particularly for consumer goods. And two, lower level of consumption in the local economy. And those are the factors that I think reflected in the volume of trade and in terms of the disparity between import and export.
All right, now my question now goes to Mr. Ekechukwu. Would you really agree that there's been an improvement in economic activities relating to this figure that we have now, 32.26 trillion naira, talking of foreign trade?
I agree completely that there is an improvement. From the figures we're already seeing, you could see that the Nigerian balance of payment is beginning to look better than what it used to be. The balance of trade is also looking very well because we're having figures of exports now more than ever before. But I'm concerned about the fact that much of the figures are coming from oil sector still. I want to see a situation where the non-oil sector will have a figure as high or even closer to what the oil figure is giving us. But the most important thing is that we are seeing some growth in the non-oil sector coming from agriculture, coming from manufacturing, and many other sectors in that regard. So what we need to do is just to ensure that the ERGP that is driving the entire process, especially for the non-oil sector, should be worked on and improved upon in order for us to have a lot of improvement in this non-oil sector. Because why I'm so particular about the non-oil sector is because we can actually control the growth pattern in that area. In the oil sector, we are not always in charge and control of that because the price could be so volatile, anything can change the pricing, and that will actually distort every program that we have. But for the non-oil sector, we can concentrate on agriculture and say this is what percentage we want to grow every quarter, and we'll continue working on that and use all the necessary policies to be able to drive this. We're already doing well in agriculture, so since we're getting such success stories in all those areas, we need to do very, very well in that area and make sure that we sustain the policies and even improve on what we're already doing. The ERGP is actually that which is driving it, and we need to make sure that anything that will distort it should be removed, and we need to work very hard to make sure the non-oil sector grows as fast as the oil sector. That's what we need to do.
All right, Mr. Johnson, back to you now, taking it from where Mr. Ikechukwu stopped now, talking about non-oil exports. A lot is being done. He also identified, talking about the agricultural sector efforts by this government and also the beautiful document, the Economic Growth and Recovery Plan, that document. Now, how well would you say we are doing? Oil accounts for 84.2% and non-oil 4.6%. When are we going to get this? When are we going to get there?
Well, it's a long journey to change the structure of our export earnings. The simple reason that we've not improved so much on the value chain of the raw commodity we produce locally. If you look at what we export today, aside crude, the agricultural products we export and the solid mineral we export are largely in unrefined format. So we're not actually getting as much economic value as we should be getting from exporting some of these raw materials, assuming we are in a process of processing them beyond their raw format. The key thing that we need to do is that we need to improve the level of beneficiation, the level of improvement in the value chain of the raw materials that we're currently exporting. Until we do that, we are not going to see a material shift in our foreign exchange earning sources. And for us to achieve that, we need to address some of the major structural bottlenecks we have in the economy. One of which is the issue of power supply or energy supply. We need to improve that urgently to reduce the cost of processing or manufacturing products locally. And then we need to look at our cost of funding and the infrastructural deficit as it relates to transport infrastructure. These are key elements that we need to improve on. But interestingly, they are not things that you can wish away over a short while. If we do not improve on our infrastructural supply, it might be difficult for you to increase on a material basis the level of share of our export earnings coming from non-oil products.
All right, now to Mr. Ikechukwu, I'm going to still stay on the non-oil sector issue now because that is where we have to go. That is where we go. Like you said, we cannot control the price of crude, volatility, whatever happens, even with the present drops and all of the issues surrounding crude oil, we can't just say. But now we've had issues of rejects You are a player in this sector where we had to move yam out of Nigeria, move some of our products out of Nigeria to the EU, and we had some problems, some rejections and all of that. How do we, if we continue to have this, then we can't get it right with the non-oil sector? Tell us your experience, your members, what they've told you about this, moving things outside the country, non-oil exports.
The various sectors of government should actually be in charge of all this. I know that the Export Promotion Council is doing a lot of training the farmers, training the exporters, and training a good number of value chain participants. Now, it is necessary for them to do this training because many Nigerians have concentrated in the past on how to import products and goods and services. Many Nigerians do not know what processes to get the best products out of the agricultural products in order to make it internationally acceptable. And so I know that they are doing a whole lot. I know also that the Chamber of Commerce, the Nasema, Abuja Chamber of Commerce, and other chambers of commerce are doing a whole lot of training to ensure that farmers and related people in the industry are being trained to understand the right things to do, the step-by-step things to do, in order for their products to be accepted wherever they are sent to. But having said that, we also need to have the banks that are supposed to fund these areas. Many of them also lack the knowledge of what they need to do in order to fund export transactions. Many times when you approach the banks for export transactions, they lack the knowledge, and so we also see that vacuum there in terms of knowledge from the banks. You also know that the country, as a country, must have a willingness to drive exports and to know that export is what will actually improve our balance of payment. It is actually what will give us the kind of revenue we want in foreign currencies. It is actually what is going to increase the value of our currency against other currencies. So once we do well in exports, we are going to be having good economy going forward. Unfortunately, again, you just know that sometimes some policies actually work against some of the achievements being made by government. For example, when you have devaluation of your currency, when the currency is devalued, you see that it will grow the exports. It will increase local production and also grow exports. But when you want to reduce the foreign currency, the exchange rate, and bring in as low as probably 100 naira per dollar, that will again work against exports. So it depends on what the government is planning to achieve. If government wants to actually reduce the inflation rate and reduce it to the barest minimum, then of course it will work against what policies we have concerning exports. So these are some of the things we need to concentrate on, the one we want to achieve, and make every effort towards achieving that. So if it is exports, then we'll have to make sure that the local production is being sustained and being provided for in order for imports not to actually kill the exportation and the local production.
All right, Mr. Chijioke there, Ikechukwu, former Director General, Abuja Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Mr. Johnson Chukwu, I must also thank you very much for sharing your afternoon with us, bearing your mind on this very important issue, talking about an uprise or an upturn in trade figures, that's foreign trade in Nigeria. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time.